Welcome back to my mom's YouTube channel.
In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to do the single crochet stitch, as well as how to chain and turn at the end of a row. So, let's get started.
On the next video,
Can you say this is part 3
this is part 3
of how to crochet
of how to crochet
for absolute
for absolute
beginners?
beginners.
Let's get started. Okay, so whenever you are learning how to crochet or just playing around with some new yarn or some new stitches, you're always going to make what is called a swatch. So this is a swatch of single crochet stitches, and this is what your finished project should look like today. And I just wanted to show you this so you'd have a little bit of reference for what it should look like. And of course, whenever you are first learning, you know, it may be looser than mine, and I find that most people, when they're learning to crochet, do crochet loose, which you will learn how to accurately hold your yarn to make sure you have tension, the right tension as time goes on. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't look perfect. It's just going to take some practice. So feel free to pause the video or rewind it and watch it until you get it. It just takes a little patience, and I promise you'll get it. So I do want to mention, if you haven't seen part 1 and part 2 of my How to Crochet series, then I would recommend definitely going back and watching those before you do this video, because there are some major principles that you need to know before you begin learning actual stitches. Okay, so let's get started. So if you will remember, you always start by making your slip knot, and I showed you how to make the slip knot in part 2, as well as how to make your chain. But just quickly, to do your slip knot, or the way I do my slip knot, is I am going to hold the yarn over my pointer and middle finger while holding it in place with my thumb, wrapping it around my fingers, crossing over, putting the hook under the first strand, grabbing the second strand, and pulling up a loop, removing my fingers and pulling the yarn tight, and then pulling on my working yarn to get it close to the hook. Again, I do that more slowly and more thoroughly in part 2, so if you don't know how to do a slip knot yet, please check that out. And then to do a chain, we're going to situate the yarn to what feels comfortable, and hopefully by now you have decided which way you would like to hold your hook, whether it be this way or this way, and how holding your yarn, your working end, and your tail yarn, the tail end, how hopefully you found a way that feels comfortable for you as well, because that is definitely the first step of learning to crochet, is figuring out what is going to work for you. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it's okay. Sometimes it just takes a little more time until it becomes comfortable. So to do your chain, you are going to yarn over, turn your hook, and pull through. And again, I go over this much more slowly and thoroughly in part 2, so please go and watch that if you haven't. So for this swatch, we're just going to chain 15. So remember, as you do your chain, you're going to want to move your hands up to make sure that you have good tension. And then at the end, once you have your 15, you always want to count. And so now I've already lost track, so I'm going to go back and count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So here's 13, 14, 15. And again, I would just count them again just to make sure, because if you are off on how many chains you have made, or if you're off on your stitches, then your project will not come out correctly. So you always want to double check and make sure that you have the right amount of chains. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And this loop that's on your hook does not count as a chain. So we have our 15. Okay, so the first row, when you're first learning, can be a little tricky, just because it's a little bit harder to see where to insert the hook and there's not as much yarn to hold on to. So again, don't get discouraged, it just takes some practice. So the way that I like to do my first row is to turn the chain and work into these little humps that you see poking up here on the back. I find that that just creates a much more even and better looking first row. Originally, when I first learned to crochet, I always learned to insert my hook here under that top little part of the stitch. And while you can do that, I find that that chain row is going to be loose and stretched out, and I just don't like the way that it looks. So I'm going to teach you how to do your first row working in those back humps there. So when you do single crochet, you always want to start in the second chain from your hook. So remember, this does not count as a chain. There's your first chain, and we're going to go into the second chain. You're going to turn your work to where you can see the little the piece of yarn that's sticking up there, and that is where you're going to insert your hook. So you're just going to push your hook through there, and then you're going to yarn over and turn your hook and pull through just like we did with the chain. But now you will have 2 loops on your hook. You then want to yarn over again, turn your hook, and pull through both of those loops. And that is your single crochet stitch. Whenever you are pulling your hook through, it helps if you pull down a little bit with these fingers to make sure your hook can easily slide through. Or if you find that it looks loose, you can take your working end of the yarn that is attached to the skein, and just gently and slightly pull that to tighten it. You don't want to do it too much because you don't want it to be really tight, but if you find that it's a little loose, just give it a little pull and it will pull everything together. Okay, so let's move on to stitch number 2. Again, here's what our chain looked like. And we are going to just turn to find the next little hump that's sticking out in the back. You're going to insert your hook, yarn over, turn your hook, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn your hook, and pull through 2. Again, if you need to, just slightly pull that yarn. Okay, now let's find the next one. So it's right there. Insert the hook, yarn over, turn your hook, and pull the yarn through. 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook, and pull through both loops. So now we've done 3, and the way that you can count those is to turn your work towards you like this, to where you can see the top of the stitch, and you'll see those V's there. So again, we don't count the one that is on the hook. So we have 1, 2, and 3. When you first learn to crochet, it can be very difficult to know what the stitch should look like and how to count and where to insert your hook, but I promise, just as I've been saying, and I'm sorry if you're tired of me saying it, but I just want to make sure you know that it is going to be awkward at first, just like with anything you're learning, but the more that you do it, the more that you practice, the easier it will become until it is second nature to know where to insert your hook, how to accurately recognize each stitch, and yeah, so just stick with it. So now to number 4, again, turn your work, and by now, once you've done a few, it should kind of naturally just be turned for you, but you're going to insert into that next hump there, yarn over, turn your hook and pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn your hook, pull through 2. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go a little bit quicker and work to the end of the row. If you need to watch that more slowly again, just rewind the video and practice until you get it. I remember that it took me quite a while to get the hang of it, and I definitely had to pause and rewatch videos so many times, but once you get it, you will feel so accomplished, so just stick with it. So a little bit quicker so you can see what it looks like. And like I said, that first row is the trickiest, just to be able to get your hook in there, make sure you're placing it in the right spot, and holding on to this little tiny chain can be difficult. But our next row will be easier. So you're just going to keep working till you get to the end, and you definitely always want to count your stitches at the end of the row just to make sure that you have the correct amount. And because we chained 15 and then our first single crochet was in the second chain from the hook, then we should have 14 stitches because we skipped that first chain. And this last stitch can be very hard to get into depending on how, because of that slip knot, it can be a little bit tighter. But just keep trying. I still have trouble even though I've been crocheting for quite a while. It can be hard to get into there, but just keep trying till you get it. Okay. So again, if you need more practice, just go back and keep working until you get it. And if you mess up and you need to remove a stitch, all you have to do is remove your hook, pull on the working end of your yarn, and the stitches will just come right out. You'll notice these, where we inserted our hook is kind of, looser now. So if you want to, you can pull on that, but it honestly makes it a little bit easier to see where to insert your hook if you leave it that way. So I'm just going to go back and put those single crochets in there again. And don't be discouraged if you have to undo the yarn several times when you're first learning. People, even experienced crocheters, still have to do that when they're doing projects because we all mess up. And again, it's still hard to get into that last stitch. Okay, so once you're at the end of the row, whenever you do a single crochet and you're doing a swatch, you want to chain one. So again, to chain, you just yarn over, turn your hook, and pull through that loop. And then what you're going to do is turn your work over. Okay, and to do row 2, this time, instead of working in the back loop like that, we are going to go into the top of the stitch. If you turn your work this way, so to count, we are going to look at the V's. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. This here is our chain, so that doesn't count as a stitch. If you need to, you can take that chain out. That'll help a little bit. We should have counted before we chained, but that'll make it a little easier to not accidentally count that stitch. So we have 14. Okay, let's put that chain back at the end and then turn. So what we're going to do is insert underneath that V. So whenever you insert, you want the V to be on top of the hook. Then you're just going to yarn over, turn your hook, pull up a loop, so you have the 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over, turn your hook, and pull through 2. The same thing we did on the first row. The only thing different is where you are inserting your hook. So again, here's up close of the stitch. We are going to be going into that little space there underneath the top 2 loops of the stitch that form that V. So after you insert, just turn your work to make sure that that V is on top there. You're going to yarn over, turn your hook, pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn, and pull through. And again, if it's loose, just pull it a little bit, insert, Make sure that those 2 loops are on the top of the hook. Yarn over, turn your hook, pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn, and pull through. Okay, so let's just go at a little quicker speed now to the end of the row. And then again, at the end, we are going to want to make sure that we still have 14 stitches. If you have more than 14 stitches, that means that you probably put 2 single crochets into the same stitch. If you don't have enough, it means that you skipped a stitch. So to fix that, you would just want to go and pull that working yarn to undo it, or frog it as we call it, and do it again until you have the 14. And this time it will be easier to insert into that last stitch. Okay, so let's count. So we're going to turn our work this way so we can see the V's. Again, that one on the hook doesn't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, and again, you yarn over, turn your hook, and chain 1, and turn your work. And it is easy when you first begin to crochet to accidentally consider that chain a stitch, because it does have that V shape to it. So just make sure that you don't do your first stitch in that chain. That is just a chain 1 is the height of a single crochet, and so it's just bringing us up to that next row. So you turn and your first stitch is here. So again, insert your hook, yarn over, make sure those 2, that V is on top, turn your hook and pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn your hook and pull through 2. Okay, and you are just going to keep working across and then chaining and turning until it's the size that you want it to be, or until you feel comfortable. And again, just don't get discouraged. You will probably have to undo it many, many times and practice many times to get it, but once you get it, you'll be all set. And it really doesn't take that long if you just stick with it. You will, the hardest part is figuring out the correct tension and, you know, making sure that you are inserting your hook in the correct spot. And before long, just keep at it and you'll definitely get it. Okay, and so I'm going to finish mine off camera. I'm just going to do a few more rows, and then I'm going to show you how to weave in the ends that you will have. So I will meet you back here in just a minute. Okay, so I'm done with my little swatch, and again, I'm just doing mine small for the purposes of this video, but yours could be as long as you want it to be, or until you feel comfortable with it. So if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry. And also, as I said in the first clip where I was showing you my first swatch, yours might not look exactly like mine, and that's okay. Yours may be a little looser. It may, you know, just not look so uniform, but it's okay. The more you do it, the better it will get. So what we're going to do next is we are going to cut our working yarn, and you always want to leave a long enough tail to be easy to weave in. And so I would say at least 3 to 4 inches is good. So we're going to cut our yarn off of the skein. And then what we're going to do to tie this off is we're just going to take our hook. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. You can yarn over and pull through and then create a little knot there. That's one way to do it, and that is totally fine, but you will have that little knot there, and if that doesn't bother you, then that's fine. But sometimes for projects you want it to look nicer and not have the knots be noticeable. So the way I do it then is I just say this is our last stitch, we just finished, we cut the yarn, and then I will just use my hook and pull that yarn through. Okay, and then we are going to get a yarn needle. These come in many different sizes, and they come in plastic and metal, and you just, whichever works for you is fine. Okay. And so what you are going to do is you are going to insert the yarn into the eye of the needle. And a little trick that I learned is if you take the yarn and you place it over the needle like this and just kind of pinch it at the bottom, it creates a nice little end there to put into the needle, because it can be hard to get that in there sometimes. So you're just going to insert that, and then you are going to look at your stitch, and you can see these V's here. This is the main body of the stitch. So you are just going to insert the hook, the needle, and you're just going to push it through until you've went through a few of the stitches, and then pull that through, and don't pull too tight or it will distort the swatch. Now you may have to pull the tail out like that. And then what you're going to do is go back the other way, but you're going to want to skip where that yarn is coming out, because if you go through there it'll just come back out again. So you want to skip that one and just go through that next strand and go back through, pull it out again, don't pull too tight, and then you're just going to remove that yarn needle, and you can cut the yarn as close as you can, and there you go. That's called weaving in your ends. And there, you can't even tell. And we're also going to do that with this one. So again, sometimes if you have a needle with a bigger eye on it, you can just stick that yarn right through. But if you have a smaller eye on your needle, then just do the trick I told you about, where you pinch the yarn, pull it off, and stick it in. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to find those V's, stick the hook through there. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. You may have to wiggle it around a little bit. Push it through. And again, you can see how that kind of pulled there. So you just want to straighten that out. And it's harder when your tail is shorter. Okay, then you're just going to skip where that came out, stick it through, and go back the other way. Okay. Pull that slightly. And then you can just cut your work, or cut the tail. And there you go. There's your first swatch. I hope that this really helped you how to learn the single crochet stitch, as well as how to weave in your ends and finish off. And just go back and watch as many times as you need to until it feels comfortable to you. And next time in part 4, I will teach you how to do the half double crochet stitch. So please tune in for that one. So thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and like this video. I would appreciate it so much, and let me know in the comments if you are brand new to crochet and if these videos are helping you. It would mean so much to me to know that these are helping you. YouTube was the way I learned, and I'm so grateful for it. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.